So our cabin burned down in 2003 in the Overland fire. It was 500 square feet. We got out with the shirts on our back, which sounds dramatic, but we actually could have packed the entire van with all of our stuff, but we just didn't. And instead, we took a bag of cookies, and I took my tarot deck, and we headed down the mountain because we thought we would be back in the cabin in the afternoon and that my partner Glenn would be working in his shop. A couple of days later, when we were finally let back up into the land, we saw that the cabin had been burned to the ground along with Glenn's shop. And the only thing that was still standing were the 3 walls of Glenn's shop that had turned bright pink, which I still don't get from the heat of the fire. And Glenn's a woodworker. He's my partner who I'd lived in this cabin with, and he's been collecting woodworking magazines since he was a kid. And so against the pink wall, there was this stack of woodworking magazines, and we could tell that they had been burned, but we could still read the writing on the spines of the magazines. So we went to touch them, and they all just dissolved into ash. We needed to start the rebuilding process immediately because we had a really limited time with insurance to build the house and the shop. And I have to be honest, I was hesitant to get into this process with this person. You know, I had just met him in February, I moved in May, the fire happened in October, all of a sudden we're building a house together on a piece of land with no more trees and no forest. So what we decided is he would design the house as if I were living there, and we would both be okay, well, we said we would be okay if I decided to actually move in. No commitments, no promises, we were just gonna take it day by day. And so 9 months later, there was no baby, but there was a house and there was Glenn's shop, and we both moved in together, and we're still there to this day. And it was weird because it took a couple of years for Glenn to be able to leave the house without having a panic attack. We couldn't even really go to town for dinner because he was so scared that he'd come up to the house and the house would be gone and his shop would be gone. Fast forward 10 years to the 2013 flood. Who remembers the 2013 flood? And who lost a house? Anybody lose a house in the 2013 flood? So a lot of us experienced that kind of awesome event. And when I say awesome, I mean the original meaning of the word awesome, like force of nature awesome, mind-boggling awesome, totally incomprehensible awesome. The weirdest part of the flood was that the announcements, I don't know if you all remember this, but they kept saying, stay where you are, don't leave, evacuate immediately and climb to higher ground. Which is very confusing when you're freaked out because there's water everywhere. And so we weren't going to evacuate at that point, but we wanted to check on our neighbor who was down below, and we walked out of the house that first morning, and our feet sunk into the mud, and then our shins sunk into the mud, and then our knees sunk into the mud, and so we had to get back to the house as quickly as we could. And we're pretty much trapped there for a couple of days, and of course, I was supposed to go grocery shopping that morning and hadn't, and so we ate the jar of Skippy peanut butter in a couple of hours, and that was our food while we were dealing with the flood. When we finally did get to walk down our road, we live at the top of a 1.5 mile, pretty rugged dirt road, and when we could finally walk down to see James Canyon, it looked like an angry monster had just taken huge bites out of the road. And half of Jamestown was on one side of that road, and half of Jamestown was on the other. And all we could do was wave at each other and hope that everybody was okay, because we didn't know, really. And when we were able to evacuate, the whole town walked together up the road, and we were carrying each other's suitcases, and we were carrying each other's pets, and we were holding each other's hands, and we were helping the grandmas, and we were helping the babies, and we were resting when somebody needed to rest. And we got to that raging river that had basically devastated Jamestown, that awesome, awesome river. And it was still raging, and we had to get across to get on the helicopters. And the fire department put a ladder out that we had to just walk across with no safety line, no harness, no hand. You just had to walk across with your suitcases and your pets and your kids. And we had to do it quickly because the helicopter had to leave as the weather was changing. And there was a little girl that was too big to be carried by her mom, and too little to go across by herself. And no one was making a decision, and people were getting tense. And Glenn just picked her up and carried her across, and we got into the helicopter. And I just want to end by saying that Glenn and I have been through a lot of storms together, a fire, a flood, illnesses, deaths, stress, family stress, house stress, car stress, everything that we've all been through as human beings. And I know another storm is coming. I don't know when, or I don't know what kind of storm it is, but when it does come, I hope I am lucky enough to weather it out with Glenn.